Well, I'm going to get right into our main speaker, and I didn't think to ask anybody for an introduction. You want to do that introduction?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to introduce
Well, there was one other thing I wanted to go over before I asked Dan to come up here is that I met the infamous Lucian Smith last week down in Jones County. He was at a meeting. While we were down there, we got to ask some questions. And of course, being in Jones County, he really wasn't expecting somebody who was in the middle of the Chris McDaniel fight, not once, but twice. But towards the end, he asked if there was any more questions. And of course, the room looked back at me, and I had to go over what happened in 2014. And he did say that someone had dropped off a book at his office or home or something. He said he read it, so I have to thank Laura for that. But anyway, I had to remind him what happened. I said, you know, this state is fractured between conservatives and establishment. I think Dan knows that, and I think most everybody that's in politics knows there's a great division in this state. And how they could have healed it, they could have appointed, instead of Cindy Hyde-Smith, they could have appointed Chris, because he did win the primary. He lost in the runoff. So that would have been the people's choice at least. So as I went through the statement and everything, I said, you know, Lucian, I said, I know you weren't part of all this when it happened. There's others that preceded you. I said, but the problem is that it's still there. I said, the feelings are still there. The bad feelings are still there. And I said, we can't coalesce behind a candidate until you guys decide to want us at the table. You just saw what happened at with Delbert Hoseman and his appointments to the committees. I know y'all looked at all the appointments. I was very disappointed. In fact, the Democrats have as much or more power than the Republicans on the Senate side right now as we speak. So some of these bills that they're coming up with are just out in right field somewhere, and that's because of his appointments. We've all met with Delbert. So, you know, the Tea Party, when they say we know folks, we've actually been in meetings with them. So we know if they're a true Republican or not, or whether they should have a D by their name instead of an R. I did ask Lucian about what is the Republican stance on a lot of issues. I said, I'm confused sometimes because we're talking about raising taxes as Republicans. We're talking about voting for Planned Parenthood things sometimes. I said, it's kind of murky out there, the difference between an R and a D. And he said, well, there is a difference between the two of them, and abortion is the big one between the two. I said, well, some of these votes on these budgets include money that does things, and maybe they need to study that budget a little closer. Yeah. But anyway, Lucian got to meet a Tea Party member in Jones County. He does want to come speak to us, believe it or not. He said he would like to come up here and actually speak to us, and I would like to get a room full of conservatives in here and really, you know, ask some good questions. But anyway, Dan has been with us before. He's part of the conservative coalition in the House side. I'm fixing to go up in his area this week. He's from the Walls area. I'll be staying in Robinsonville, just down the street. I've got some business up there and around the Memphis area. They've got a Best Western at $45 a night. You can't beat that. Can't room for $45 a night. You can't beat it.
I hope it didn't have bed bugs.
No, well, that I don't. It could have coronavirus for all I know. Anyway, well, I was thinking of us. I was talking a little bit earlier. We're a member of a church here in Rankin County, and the hype has gotten into the churches. This is the first time I've ever known. We've had the SARS virus, we've had Ebola, we've had a little bit of everything over the last 10 years. Seems like it's every election cycle there's something. But anyway, the church asked for folks not to shake hands. Well, I'm over the 9:15 greeters and offering. Now, I've got about 20 guys that basically work for me. Of course, we're all non-paid. So I sent an email back to the church, and I said, you know, part of Christianity, part of the brotherhood, is you put hands on somebody when you pray for them. I said, not only that, you pass the offering basket, and everybody touches the offering basket in the church. I mean, you sneeze, cough, they grab a basket. I never think about things like that, but I sent the email back. I said, if you really want to contain the virus, if you're scared of it, just cancel all 3 services. You don't. It's crickets. You don't know. We're not going to cancel. Okay. Well, I know what's more important. Is the collection is more important than the virus, right? So, but anyway, to read a little bit of Dan's background, I didn't know that he was out of Arkansas, as a matter of fact. 32 resident of DeSoto County. He's a pastor, businessman, husband, father. On January 7, 2020, Dan was sworn in for a second term as Mississippi State Representative for District 25. He's a middle child, so I guess he's got a middle child syndrome, I guess. Dan is the son of John and Ruth Eubanks. He's been married to Corey Eubanks for 20 years and is a father of one. Dan has attended Northwest Mississippi Community College, so he did spend money in Mississippi on his education. Kilgore College, Carl Parsons Universität, Ries, Austria. Universidad de Autónoma Guadalajara, Mexico. Boy, you're testing me. Linguistics. The University of Arkansas and Mid-America Baptist Seminary. Well, you spent a lot of time in school, didn't you?
Yeah.
A lot of time. Dan holds degrees in commercial photography and business finance with additional studies in international business, German, Spanish, culture, language, and theology. You're a jack of all trades. Well, go ahead and welcome Dan Eubanks. Come on up.
Well, I feel like I'm among family here because I love being with folks of like mind, and I appreciate what you guys do and what you stand for, and the fact that you actually, put the rubber where the road meets, right? Where a lot of people like to just sit around and be an armchair political junkie and scream at your television, but you guys, I know y'all get engaged, that you're active. I met Laura the first couple of months that I served, and Ron throughout the last 4 years as we were trying to get the convention states through. And so I appreciate that you guys love your country and you love freedom and you love the Constitution and that you're engaged. Really, if you think about it, the world's always been changed by a minority. And if you go back to history, there was 3%. You hear people talk about the 3 percenters, but there was 3% of the people that got us into the American Revolution and got things rolling. So never, ever underestimate the power of a dedicated minority. So tonight, I wasn't given anything specific to talk about, and I don't want to put you to sleep, but I thought I'd talk about just sort of like, I don't know if you ever watched Saturday Night Live or anything like that. I haven't watched it in a long time because it's gotten so anti-Trump and everything else, but they have this little segment that they'll pop up, and it's like Deep Thoughts by Jack Candy. So I'm going to give you some deep thoughts about the legislature. Most of them probably won't surprise you in the slightest, but I thought it would just be kind of a sort of maybe a fresh perspective. It's something that I have experienced, and that if any of you guys ever decide to run, be ready to experience yourself. It also, I think, will help if there's legislation you want to kill or legislation you want to advance, knowing some of these things and how the system and the machine kind of operates, because it will help you to accomplish your goal. So the first thing, there's 5 of them here. I'm sure there's more than 5, but on my drive down from Walls, these were some of the things that just came to mind. I jotted them down real quick so I could share with you. The first thing is that the swamp exists at all levels of government. Okay, you guys already knew that, right? You would think, the way people talk is just in D.C., but that is not the case. It is, the state government is just a microcosm of what goes on in the larger government. And your local government is just another microcosm of what goes on in the state government. And it's not just, I think, consolidated to government. It's the state agencies. You see what's kind of going on with DHS right now, one of the biggest scandals around. That busted for the millions of dollars that have been misused and misappropriated. It goes on at all levels of government. So the second thing is this, that there are 3 human conditions that drive and motivate almost every elected official. Okay, I guess you guys could probably guess. We'll get a little audience participation here. What do you think those 3 things are?
Money.
Money, yes. Well, fear, greed would be where the money part comes in, and love, believe it or not. Yep. It's not always about the bad. If you think about it, fear is the thing that makes you run from a burning building. Love is the thing that will cause you to run into a burning building if there's something in there that you love. The thing about fear and greed, though, now these 2 human conditions are probably the primary motivator for most every politician. And even the ones that tell you that they love liberty and they love the Constitution and they love freedom, they have to battle those two things as well. Fear that you will lose power and greed for more power. Because the way the system's set up, it's like, well, you're never going to get anything done unless you play by the rules and you play the game and you attain a certain level and a certain status. And so that keeps you in check. And so your greed for, or fear of missing out or greed of not attaining will tend to affect and control a lot of people, I think most people go into politics because they want to see change, right? But a lot of times what happens is, and sometimes it's a fast process and sometimes it's a slow process. I know I was being asked earlier about a particular representative and said, well, how's my representative doing? And it's like, well, I don't know. I haven't seen his voting record yet, but time will tell. And so those two things are also how you can work to take and further or advance whatever piece of legislation, or if you want it to die. If you can appeal to that fear and that greed component, the fear that, well, we're going to make sure somebody runs against you in 4 years, or that fear that they're somehow going to lose their place, you can move a lot of legislation. Ron will give a testimony to this. The more a politician thinks they have a constituency base that is for something, the more afraid they are of not listening to them and doing what they want. So that can always come into play to help you get stuff done. Now the thing about love, now this category I think makes up the smallest percentage. Some people get into politics or they continue to serve in politics because they have a love for their constituency, or they have a love for the ideals of this nation. They have a love for freedom. They have a love for the Constitution, and they don't want it to go down in flames. And so they're willing to endure whatever it takes because they have that love. It's what keeps you coming back when you're like, why am I here? Why do I even want to come back? It's just, if I leave, then who's going to stand up and fight for what's right and for what I love? And so love is the other motivator. The third thing, so we've talked about the fact that the swamp exists everywhere and that there are three things that motivate all politicians. Well, the third thing is, and Calvin Coolidge said this, that it is better to kill bad bills than to pass good ones. All right, we all think we got to get out and pass some good legislation, right? If we could just pass this bill, if we could just do this good thing, you would be amazed at how much horrible stuff comes up that we wind up having to fight. I think the little core group of conservatives in the House have been more successful at that than just about anything. And you'll never hear about that because your name isn't on a bill that you kill, right? But if it offends certain principles that we stand for, then, the gloves come off. You do whatever you got to do. If that means making alliances with Democrats, you do it. If that means shining a light on what's really at stake, you do it. And so sometimes killing bad stuff is way more important than passing good stuff. I'll give you a sort of a funny example. Just recently, we had a bill that came through the Ag Committee. I was a little late because I lead the Capitol Prayer Group there on Tuesday mornings, which any of you guys that are around the Capitol on a Tuesday morning at 8:30, you're more than welcome to come be a part of the group. It's made up of legislators and lobbyists and just other Christians from the community that come in. But I was a little late getting there. I came in and I sit down and they hand me my packet and they're going straight onto this bill that was going to ban the sale of goat milk in Mississippi. Okay, you would think goat milk, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, a lot of people can't drink cow milk, right? And we have a lot of people around the state that they have a small little micro business. They milk their goats, they sell their goat milk, and they legally they have the right to do that as long as their herd's not over 9 milking goats. And for some people, they would prefer the raw form of it because it's better for you, all the probiotics there. I grew up drinking raw milk. And so this was going to make them criminals as soon as it passed. And it was well on the way to pass it because I've been fighting to get laws passed that will free up some of our farmers to do some of this on-farm sales type things, and even allow people to sell raw cow milk. If I have a cow and you want raw cow milk, you can come to my farm and buy it from me in an arm's length transaction. We're not talking about selling it in the stores or the restaurants. We're talking about, you know exactly what you're getting. But you would think that you were trying to institute some type of treason or riot or criminal act, because right now it is illegal, friends, to go buy raw cow milk and drink it in our state.
That's true.
What is up with that? So I have a lot of folks up in DeSoto County that illegally cross state lines and go to Jackson and buy it in Tennessee, where they can buy it, and then they bring it back down to Mississippi. And that should not be. So by getting rid of the goat milk, they get rid of any foothold or chance of ever getting cow milk in there. So I start speaking up, and I'm hollering, and I'm raising, you know, whatever kind of cane I can. You know, so, well, it's a safety issue. Okay, how many people died? Has anybody gotten sick from it in the state? Can you give me some? Well, we don't know about that. We just know it's a safety issue. And I said, well, that's kind of disingenuous when you think about the fact that, you know, over 500,000 people a year die from cigarette smoking in our country. Over 6,000 of them are in Mississippi a year. Another 88,000 die from alcohol related illnesses and injury. And nobody seems on a tear to go and, you know, shut that down. Well, if you want to know, 3 people since 1994 in our country have died from raw milk, or at least the CDC attributes it to it. So if you really want to talk about safety, you're being disingenuous. There was another thing at play. So here's what happens. I'm the only no vote in committee. Well, it's double referred, and we had to take, and I went and called the chairman of public health, which the other committee was sent to. I said, look, before you bring this up, I want you to know my problems with it. And I'll get up and rail against it on the floor, and I'm going to blah, blah, blah. And so what I did was I took and talked with the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, and they did a little post, and I reshared the post, and I sent it to people around the state that I knew had big audiences. And they put it out there. They wore out the chairman. They called, they emailed, and I didn't realize how many people had actually sold goat milk, and they were contacting me going, thank you, you gotta, you know, can't let this happen. Well, we were able to kill that. So, and it was only because, number one, somebody recognized this is bad for freedom, this is bad for individual liberty, but it's also bad because it's gonna criminalize a portion of our population and make them criminals and fine them and give them jail time because they want to sell some goat milk. And we got better things to do in our state than that. So we killed it. And that was partially because we had somebody that recognized the voice, but it had a lot to do with people just like you guys. An army rising up and then reaching out and contacting their legislators and saying, hey, this is not right. We shouldn't do this. You're going to hurt my business. You're going to hurt my health. You're going to hurt all these different reasons. And so we were able to get it killed. So the fourth thing is when people scream safety as a reason for doing something, as their excuse, right? Whether we're talking goat milk or roads and bridges or raising your taxes, a red flag should always come up. The minute somebody starts screaming that, you should always have a red flag come up. Because the reason why a lot of bad stuff is passed and pushed through, and the reason they use safety is because most people are like, oh, okay, well, we don't want anybody to get hurt, so yeah, safety. So it shuts down the debate right away. But if you really kind of peel back the curtain and you look at it when somebody's like, oh, it's a safety concern. You guys might remember when we were talking about roads and bridges, and there's like, you know, there's bridges and there's going to be school buses full of children. These school buses can't go across these bridges. They're going to collapse and you know, people are going to die. And so it's like, oh, we got to raise some taxes. We got to fix these bridges, right? Well, here's the sad irony, is that these same counties, and most all of those were local roads and bridges. It wasn't state roads and bridges. And you have these local governments that they have these little county roads that they're responsible for, that school buses full of children are going to die over, right? And what are they doing with the money? They're giving $100,000 of taxpayer money to United Way. You know, they're building $1 million walking trail. And you got to ask yourself, where are the priorities here? So if you start peeling it back and taking a look at what's really going on, you're like, well, okay, yeah, there may be some safety concerns, but there's bigger issues at play here. And so same with the goat milk, you know, oh, it's just, there's danger. Well, did you know that the listeria outbreaks all came from pasteurized homogenized milk? Okay, and that was one of the questions that I asked. I called the health department, I said, I want you to tell me exactly how many people in our state have been sickened or died from drinking raw goat milk. And so you start seeing it's not that at all. So always, when you hear, well, it's a safety concern, your red flag should go up. Because that's another way of shutting people down and shutting down debate. Then the fifth thing, and this is the last one I was going to talk to you guys about, if I can get my phone to quit going to sleep here, was that to fight for liberty and freedom, to fight to protect your hard-earned money, to push back against the swamp, can be terribly lonely, isolating, and depressing at times, if not for people and folks like you guys. You know, how many compliments do you need to make up for an insult? Are you going to fight for something if you feel like nobody even really cares? And so the encouragement that your champions, whoever they are, if it's an issue that you know they're fighting hard for and they're taking arrows over, the champion that you have needs to know it. They need to know that you appreciate what they're doing. And I'm not saying that because I want anybody to give me any accolades. I'm saying that because it is very real. And people, that's why you see members of Congress, they're like, I'm done. Some of our champions are like, I'm going home to my family. This is pointless. Because after a while, it takes a toll on you. But it's not just about encouragement. It's also about taking and being that sort of army, right? Because you can't back anything up if you can't activate an army. And so if I rail against goat milk and 10,000 people bombard the Ag Committee and the chairman about how unconstitutional and how anti-liberty this is, guess what happens the next time a battle comes up? And you say, hey, this isn't right. They're like, okay, please don't let my phone ring off the hook. Please don't have people calling for my impeachment, you know. And so having an army of people to be engaged and involved behind you that's willing to take 2 minutes to send an email or make a phone call or a Facebook post means everything to getting things done and accomplished. So those 5 things were just sort of, you know, just items that kind of came to me, and, you know, the fact that the swamp does exist at all levels, and you got to be constantly vigilant about that. That there are 3 human conditions that motivate every politician, and if you can figure out what motivates your politician, you can figure out how to get them to do what you want to do. That killing bad bills are way more important than passing good ones. And then, you know, when people are screaming safety, your little antennas should come up. Ask yourself, is there more at play here? I beg, you know, to be just perfectly honest, I think about this whole coronavirus business. If you look at the kill rate of that compared to the normal flu, if you look at the fact that it's being so hyped up, and we've created a hysteria when you read the articles that say that you know, the majority of people that get coronavirus don't even know they have it, or it manifests as sort of like a bad cold. You have a lot of the immunocompromised and the aged that are dying. They've been wearing Trump out when he was saying, hey, it's not that big of a deal, because it seemed like he didn't care. It's getting spun up to the point, you guys, if you check the Dow Jones Industrial Average, you know what's going on here. And so anytime people start screaming safety, sometimes you've got to stop and ask the question. Maybe it really is a safety concern and you need to do something. If that's the case, you act on it. But sometimes it's being used as a way to take and manipulate. And then lastly, remember to stay engaged in the fight. Remember to take and encourage your champions and to back them up. And we'll get a lot of stuff done in this state. But that's all I got for you. I didn't want to bore you guys. I didn't know how long I had to talk, but I'd be glad to answer questions if you have any. But I do appreciate all you guys. Ross.
Thank you for being here very much. I've got a lot of questions I could ask, but it's census time.
Yes.
And I know